They say you remember the exact weather on the day your life quietly falls apart. Mine? Cloudy, with a 70% chance of gaslighting. It started in aisle 6 of the local office supply store. Nothing says marital bliss like comparing printer paper weights with your wife on a Sunday afternoon. We'd been together for almost 9 years, 7 married, 2 spent arguing over things like dishwasher loading methods and the moral implications of pineapple on pizza. Her name was Sarah, the kind of woman who could argue the proper pronunciation of euro with a Greek man and still come out smiling. Brilliant, composed, infuriating in a way that made you love her harder. That day, she was standing in front of the pens. Red ones, to be exact. She always used red pens to grade her students' papers. Sarah was a high school English teacher, and if there was anything she loved more than Shakespeare and a glass of Cabernet, I hadn't met it yet. I'm telling you, she said, holding up a new brand. These glide better than the Uniball ones. I raised an eyebrow. That's oddly passionate. She laughed and tossed them into the cart. We all need something to believe in. If this were a rom-com, I tell you I looked at her right then and felt the universe align. But no, what I noticed was the subtle twitch in her cheek. The way she avoided eye contact when I asked if we needed anything else. The fact that she checked her phone 3 times in 5 minutes and smiled at something she didn't share with me. A week ago, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But ever since her work retreat in the city 2 weekends ago, she had been different. Not in the usual post-conference, my colleagues are idiots kind of way. No. This was quieter, more careful, like someone deleting footprints behind them in fresh snow. We paid for the pens and some printer ink we didn't need, and on the drive home, she hummed a song I didn't recognize. Her phone buzzed once. She silenced it with the speed of a ninja, then changed the subject to holiday travel plans. Me? I smiled. I drove. I nodded along. But inside, a red pen was underlining things. Lots of things. And not just in ink. Sarah's new favorite word was boundaries. She tossed it around like it came with a therapy license and a coupon for free self-respect. I just think we need clearer boundaries, Ethan, she said one night while scrolling Instagram beside me in bed, not looking up. It's healthy. I blinked. Boundaries? Yeah. Like, less checking in, less hovering, less merging of everything. Independence, you know. Now, keep in mind, we share a mortgage, a bed, a car, and a Netflix password. The only thing I'd ever checked in on was whether she wanted tacos or Thai for dinner. And I've never merged a single thing in my life without full permission, emotionally or financially. Still, I nodded like a man studying for a pop quiz on how to avoid a fight. Sure, I said. Healthy. Boundaries. Got it. That night, she slept like a baby. I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan, wondering when I love you turned into I need space. The next morning, I made coffee like usual. She came down late, hair in a messy bun, cheeks flushed, phone in hand. She barely looked at me. Coffee? I asked. No time, she said, slipping her shoes on at the door. I'm meeting Ryan for a curriculum review. It might go late. Oh, Ryan. That name had started appearing more often. First as a footnote in her work stories. Then as a co-worker who gets the staff room humor. I apparently didn't. Now he was suddenly worth being late for coffee. Cool, I said too calmly. Tell Ryan I said hi. She froze for just half a second. Just a flicker. Then forced a smile and said, of course, like I'd asked her to feed the cat. She left. I sat on the couch, sipping coffee she didn't have time for, thinking about boundaries. Turns out, Sarah wasn't building a fence. She was drawing a line in the sand with my name on one side and Ryan's thumbprint on the other. But still, I wasn't jumping to conclusions. Not yet. Because in every marriage, there's a moment when the lights flicker. And you tell yourself it's just the bulb. Not a power outage. Not the storm creeping in. You just haven't realized you're already in the dark. It happened on a Thursday. A cool autumn evening. One of those crisp nights where the air feels like clean glass and everything's just a little too quiet. Sarah had mentioned the faculty mixer earlier in the week. Something about networking, department morale, and how the English department had rented out the top floor of some trendy wine bar downtown. You don't have to come, she'd said casually, slicing into her avocado toast like she wasn't also carving a wedge into our schedule. It's more of a work thing. Probably boring. Trust me. Which is exactly what you say when you absolutely do not want your husband there. So, naturally, I went. I didn't tell her. Didn't text. Didn't warn anyone? I just showed up like a mid-episode plot twist. The place was a mix of exposed brick, overpriced cheese, and people trying to sound smarter than they actually were. I scanned the crowd. Teachers sipping wine and pretending not to hate their students. The usual. But then I saw her. Sarah. Leaning in toward a man who, even from across the room, screamed, emotional affair with a gym membership. Tall. Trim beard. Brown leather jacket like he was auditioning for a local detective show. And the way she laughed, God, that laugh. The one she used to reserve for me when I said something halfway clever after 2 beers. Now she gave it to him like it was nothing. I didn't go over right away. I watched. Observed. Her hand brushed his arm when she said something. His hand never left the small of her back. It was choreography. Smooth. Practiced. Comfortable. They were a we. I finally stepped into view. She saw me mid-sentence, eyes widening like someone had just spilled red wine on her wedding dress. Ethan, she stammered, plastering on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. What are you doing here? I shrugged. Didn't want to miss out on a good mixer. You know how much I love lukewarm Cabernet and small talk about standardized testing. The guy beside her shifted uncomfortably. He extended his hand. Ryan, he said. Of course he was Ryan. Ryan with the curriculum reviews. Ryan with the urgent late-night planning. Ryan with the just close enough body language to make my blood simmer. I shook his hand. Firm. Deliberate. The way you do when you're thinking of all the things you can't say. Well, I said, I've heard a lot about you. Sarah's smile cracked. She looked from me to Ryan like a kid caught between divorced parents during a bad school play. I didn't know you were coming, she said quietly, trying to pull me aside. Yeah, I said, voice steady. I figured you'd say that. I stayed for 15 more minutes. Just long enough to make eye contact. To remind Ryan that husbands exist. To watch Sarah squirm every time our eyes met. When I left, I didn't say goodbye. Didn't kiss her cheek. Didn't wait for a text. Because I didn't need her to confirm it. The truth doesn't always slap you. Sometimes, it just stands across the room in a leather jacket and smiles at your wife like he's already won. You'd be surprised how many marriages have died quietly in the glow of a phone screen. It was the night after the faculty mixer. Sarah came home late. Said she'd grabbed drinks with a few coworkers after. Didn't mention Ryan. Didn't have to. Her tone had changed from defensive to rehearsed. Like she was reading off cue cards that had been tested on other husbands first. I was sitting up in bed when she walked in, still wearing the same wine-colored blouse she'd had on at the bar. Lipstick faded, eyes tired, hair tousled, but not in the way a normal night out would cause. It looked, lived in. Hey, she said, like she'd just returned from the store. Hey, I replied, not bothering to close the book in my lap. I wasn't reading it anyway. She headed to the bathroom, tossed her earrings onto the counter like they were trying to escape the conversation. Then came the perfume. Not the subtle floral kind she wore to work. This one was heavier, warmer. The kind you wear when you're hoping someone leans in close. She emerged 10 minutes later, climbed into bed beside me with that sigh people make when they're pretending they're already forgiven. Long day, she murmured. I nodded, eyes on the book. Must have been. You were glowing on that rooftop. She flinched. Subtle, but real. You followed me? She asked, voice sharper now. Nope, I said, setting the book down. I attended a public work event at a public bar. Pretty sure that's legal. Jesus, Ethan. She turned onto her side, back to me, the universal sign for, I'm done talking. I stared at the ceiling, counted the tiny dots in the plaster like they were clues. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was stewing in anger, but because I was calculating. Connecting the dots. Building a case in my head like a quiet prosecutor who knew the jury was already leaning one way. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. I just wanted the truth. And the truth, like most unfaithful partners, was always hiding in plain sight. The next morning, she left early. Said she had a 7:15 meeting, something about budget planning. She kissed my cheek, called me babe, and smelled like guilt and lavender. As soon as her car left the driveway, I went to her side of the bed. Her phone was still on the nightstand. Now look, I'm not a snooper by nature. I don't go digging through drawers or checking pockets. I believed in trust. But trust has an expiration date, and hers had been sitting out in the sun for months. I picked up the phone. Locked, of course. She'd changed the passcode 2 weeks ago. Said it was because of students. Cute. But Sarah had a weakness, one she hadn't updated since our honeymoon, her tablet. The iPad she kept in the kitchen drawer for recipes and Pinterest boards. Synced to the same iCloud as her phone. I took it out, fired it up, and opened the Messages app. And there it was. Ryan, 10:46 p.m. I miss how you smell. That shampoo. That spot behind your ear. Sarah, 10:47 p.m. Then come closer next time. You rushed out so fast last night. Ryan, 10:48 p.m. You told me to. Sarah, 10:49 p.m. Doesn't mean I wanted you to listen. I sat there, numb. The words didn't hurt as much as the timestamp. 10:46. That was after she got home. After she'd kissed me on the cheek. After she'd laid in bed beside me like nothing was wrong. There were dozens of texts like that. Little digital fingerprints of betrayal. Inside jokes I didn't recognize. Photos with backgrounds I did recognize, my house, my backyard, my world. I closed the iPad, stared at the toaster like it owed me something. And the oddest thing? I didn't cry. I didn't punch a wall or scream into a pillow. I made coffee. Because when the curtain finally drops, and the affair becomes fact instead of suspicion, all that's left is logistics. Your heart doesn't shatter in one dramatic crack. It crumbles. Slowly. Quietly. Into dust you wipe off the countertop while the kettle boils. That night, I didn't mention the iPad. Didn't let on. I was polite. Warm, even. How was your day? I asked over dinner. She smiled. Busy. Productive. You. Same, I said, biting into a chicken breast I couldn't taste. Oh, funny thing. I used your iPad earlier to look up a marinade. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. Oh, yeah, I said, smiling. It's still linked to your phone, by the way. Just thought you should know. Her expression froze for half a second. That same twitchy micro-expression I saw at the wine bar. Then she laughed. Right. Forgot about that. We should update the settings sometime. Sure, I said. Wouldn't want the wrong message going to the wrong person. She didn't look up after that. We ate the rest of dinner in silence. The next morning, her iPad was gone, replaced by a note on the counter that read, "Gone for a run. Be back by 8." She returned at 8:47. Hair wet. Clothes too clean for a trail run. I didn't ask questions, because I already had answers. And answers, like good revenge, don't need to shout. They wait. There's something strangely poetic about planning a party with the person who's slowly burning your world down. A few days after the iPad incident, Sarah brought up the idea over dinner like we hadn't just passed through the Bermuda Triangle of marital tension. I was thinking we should throw a small gathering, she said, stabbing a piece of grilled zucchini. You know, just a little backyard thing. Friends, some coworkers. A reset. I stared at her for a beat, then nodded. Sure. Sounds fun. It wasn't the idea that caught me off guard. It was her timing. Planning a social event with your spouse is one thing. Planning one with your secret affair partner likely on the invite list? That's a whole different level of audacity. But I wasn't about to argue. Any particular weekend in mind? I asked. She smiled an automatic PR smile. Next Saturday. We'll keep it casual. I'll handle the guest list. Of course you will, I muttered, mostly to my whine. She didn't catch it. Over the next few days, I watched her move through the house like a cruise director. She ordered string lights, cleaned the patio cushions, even bought a new cooler for drinks. I watched her go through the motions like a woman trying to perfect the optics. Because that's what this was now, optics. The illusion of domestic bliss, perfectly lit for Instagram and just believable enough to fool the guests. Maybe even herself. On Thursday, I accidentally opened the wrong envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was a handwritten list, names, some scratched out and rewritten. At the top, Backyard Bash, RSVP. Ryan was on it. In parentheses, +1. I laughed out loud. Not dramatically. Just a short, dry chuckle that made the dog look up from his bed. There it was. The smoking gun written in perfect cursive, right between Jen, vegan, and Matt and Lisa bring wine. Now I had a plan. Or at least, the shape of one. By Friday, the house was glowing like a Pottery Barn catalog. Sarah lit candles, fluffed pillows, even cut fresh lemons for the water pitchers. All for her small reset. I, on the other hand, made a few quiet calls. Not to friends. Not to my coworkers. But to people who mattered in this new reality. First was my old college roommate, Derek, now a private investigator who owed me 3 favors and a bottle of bourbon. I need phone records, I said. Text logs. Her work phone if you can. You want the guy's info too? He asked, already typing. No, I replied. I already know him. I just want proof she can't talk her way out of. He chuckled. Revenge or closure? Just setting the table, I said. I'm hosting. The next morning, Derek delivered. Neatly packaged in a sealed folder, waiting in my inbox with a subject line that simply read, Bon appetit. Inside? Timestamp texts, voicemails, a few blurry parking garage photos, and one invoice from a hotel in town, booked under Ryan's name with a very familiar check-in date, the same weekend Sarah told me she was staying late to help grade finals. I printed everything, stapled it, slipped it into a plain manila envelope. And then I smiled. Not because it felt good, because it felt right. Like I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was directing. Saturday arrived. The sun was out. The drinks were cold. And the crowd was, unfortunately, beautiful. Sarah wore a cream sundress she hadn't pulled out since our anniversary in Napa. Her hair was curled. Her smile was a little too bright. I'd seen that smile before. At the mixer. Across the room. At Ryan. He showed up just after 6 p.m., like he was fashionably late to his own smug debut. Khakis, linen shirt, a bottle of white wine in hand, and sunglasses he didn't take off for the first 20 minutes. He looked like a walking Facebook at 4, divorced but thriving. I watched Sarah greet him at the side gate. They didn't touch, but her hand lingered on his elbow longer than necessary. Long enough for me to note the choreography again. She introduced him to a few coworkers, friends. Then, after about 45 minutes of mingling and laughs that were 2 notches too loud, she guided him my way. Ethan, she said, a touch of faux cheer in her voice. You remember Ryan? Of course, I said. Hard to forget someone who makes such a lasting impression. Ryan offered his hand. I took it. Good to finally talk, he said. Without the rooftop tension. I nodded, chuckling lightly. Yeah, this is better. We're all adults, right? He smiled, but I saw something twitch at the edge of it. I patted his shoulder, then handed him a fresh drink. You'll want this, I said. The night's just getting started. For the next hour, I watched the party unfold like a slow-motion car crash. Ryan stuck close to Sarah. Not too close, but close enough for a man who forgot how to be subtle. I made rounds. Served drinks. Laughed at jokes. Looked like the husband every guest envied. Then, just as the fairy lights buzzed on and people began to settle into lawn chairs, I cleared my throat and tapped a glass. Folks, I said. Quick toast before the dessert hits. Sarah's eyes flicked to me. Suspicion just beginning to bloom. I just want to say thank you, I began. For being here, for helping us build this home, this life. Sarah and I, we've had an amazing few years. Like any marriage, there have been chapters. She shifted. Ryan sipped his drink. And tonight, in the spirit of transparency and trust, I want to share something special. Something that really sums up where we are now. I pulled the manila envelope from under the patio table. This, I said, holding it up, is a collection of love notes, texts, and memories from the last few months. Sarah froze. Unfortunately, they weren't sent to me. The silence dropped like a curtain. Some were from hotel rooms. Others from the school parking lot. Some late at night while I was upstairs asleep. But all of them, I said, walking slowly to Ryan and placing the envelope on his lap, were written by you. Ryan didn't move. Sarah's face went pale. I turned back to the guests, stunned, awkward, shifting in their chairs. Desserts in the kitchen, I said. Help yourselves. Then I walked inside. I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. I just let the silence finish what I had started. There are 2 kinds of silence after a storm. One is peaceful. The birds come back, the air smells cleaner, and you feel like maybe the worst is behind you. The other is loaded. Still. Too still. Like the earth is holding its breath, waiting for the second wave. Ours was the second kind. The moment I closed the patio door behind me, the silence out there exploded into the sound of chairs shifting, throats clearing, glasses being placed gently, awkwardly, on tables. I didn't stay to watch it all collapse. I'd already done my part. My role wasn't to narrate the fallout. It was to deliver the fuse, light it, and walk away. I stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing an already clean glass just to have something to do with my hands. Through the window, I saw Ryan rise from his seat, envelope in hand, looking like a man who had just been asked to publicly solve a math problem he didn't understand. He said something to Sarah, but she didn't respond. She just stood there, still as a statue carved out of denial. Within 10 minutes, the backyard had cleared out faster than a fire drill at a fireworks factory. Guests filtered out through the gate, some pretending not to look at her, others giving her pitying glances, the kind that said, I'd never do this to my husband, while secretly wondering if they could pull it off better. Eventually, the door creaked open. Sarah stepped into the kitchen like she was walking into a courtroom without a lawyer. "You done?" she asked. Her tone wasn't angry. It was hollow, tired, like she'd skipped past guilt and gone straight to the resignation phase of betrayal. I didn't turn. Not quite. I'm still deciding whether to wash the cooler or just set it on fire. She let out a bitter laugh. "Well, you really went for the grand reveal, huh?" I turned the faucet off and faced her. "No, I went for the truth. Sorry if it ruined your ambience." She crossed her arms. "You embarrassed me." I blinked. "You cheated on me. Repeatedly. You lied. Repeatedly. And you're mad because I didn't protect your image in front of a bunch of coworkers and wine moms." She said nothing. Just stared. Probably rehearsing lines she never thought she'd have to deliver under these lighting conditions. I didn't wait for her apology. I knew it wasn't coming. Cheaters rarely apologize for the cheating. They apologize for getting caught. And Sarah? She was too polished to admit to cracks in her facade. "You invited him here," I said. "To our home. You smiled in photos, you made lemonade, and all the while, you had his name in parentheses on the guest list. Do you know how insane that is?" Her face twisted. "You don't get it. I didn't know how to end it. Things got complicated." I nodded slowly. "Right. I can see how sleeping with a coworker while lying to your husband might get messy. I didn't mean for it to happen," she snapped, voice finally breaking. "It just did." I love that phrase. It just happened. Like infidelity is gravity or traffic or a spilled cup of coffee. Like it wasn't a dozen decisions in a row that led her from our shared bed to someone else's arms. "You didn't mean for it to happen," I repeated. "But you meant for it to continue." That landed. She blinked hard. Bit her lip. "Do you love him?" I asked. Silence. I repeated the question, slower this time. "Do you love him?" She looked down, then shook her head. "I don't know." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was pathetic. A final nail in the coffin of the person I thought I knew. "Well," I said, grabbing a towel and drying my hands, "let me know if you figure that out before the movers arrive." Her eyes snapped to mine. "Movers?" I gestured vaguely toward the hallway. "I made a few calls. You'll find a folder on the desk, list of your stuff, a key to the storage unit, contact info for a lawyer. It's clean. You keep your car, your personal savings. I'm not interested in a battle." She looked stunned. "You're just done." I met her gaze evenly. "Sarah, I was done the moment I had to learn the details of our marriage from an iPad. Everything since then? It's just been cleanup." She stepped forward like she wanted to say something. Maybe reach for my arm, maybe cry. I stepped back. Don't mistake restraint for forgiveness. I hadn't blown up at the party because I still loved her. I did it because she thought I never would. Because she bet on my silence and lost. She stared at me, mouth slightly open, 1,000 apologies fighting to be born, but none brave enough to make it past her pride. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. I shrugged. "Now? I sleep. I wake up. I live. Well, that's your story to write now." The silence that followed wasn't angry or awkward. It was final. She walked upstairs. I heard the bedroom door click shut. No slam. No last-ditch monologue. And just like that, the storm passed. Not with thunder, but with clarity. They don't tell you what to do after you've gotten your revenge. Nobody writes a manual for men who've just torched the fantasy and are now standing in the wreckage, breathing a little easier, but still surrounded by ash. Sarah moved out 3 days later. She didn't cry. Didn't fight. She just packed up her curated life, monogrammed towels, matching mugs, that ridiculous live, laugh, love sign, and walked out with the grace of someone leaving a spa weekend early. I stood in the living room watching the U-Haul pull away. No grand farewell. Just taillights and silence. The weirdest part? The house felt lighter. The air wasn't so tense. No more walking on eggshells. No more wondering if I was being paranoid or perceptive. Just the quiet hum of the fridge and the occasional bark from the neighbor's dog. I started rearranging things. Not the furniture, the atmosphere. Her framed inspirational quotes came down. I replaced the gallery wall with old vinyl records and a framed map of every place I'd ever wanted to go but hadn't. Yet, I didn't miss her. I missed who I thought she was. And those are two very different things. One night, about a week after she left, I got a text from her. "I hope someday you'll forgive me." I stared at it for a while. Then I did the most peaceful thing I've ever done in my life. I deleted it without replying. You'd think Ryan would disappear quietly, fade into the mist like a disappointed magician. But no. A week after Sarah left, he showed up at my doorstep. He had the gall to look nervous, like I might still be harboring a grudge or a baseball bat. "Ethan," he said, voice low. "Can I talk to you for a sec?" I leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed. "You've got 30. He sighed. "I just want to say, I didn't mean for things to go the way they did." "Yeah," I said. "That's what she said, too. You two should get matching t-shirts." He swallowed. "She told me it was over between you two, that you were emotionally checked out. She made it sound like you didn't care." I nodded slowly. "Well, that's the funny thing about affairs, Ryan. They tend to rewrite history in favor of the people having them. I'm not proud of it." I gave him a tight smile. "You're not proud? I'm not married. We both lost something, but only one of us did it honestly." He looked down. "I think she regrets it." I leaned in slightly. "Let me tell you something, Ryan. Regret's not the same as remorse. She regrets getting caught. She regrets losing her comfort zone. But if she truly felt remorse, she'd be here apologizing to me instead of sending you like some well-groomed carrier pigeon." He winced. I nodded toward the sidewalk. "You can go now." He left. And for the first time in this whole saga, I actually felt sorry for the guy. Because while I was starting over, he was still trapped in a story Sarah hadn't finished writing. Closure is overrated. You don't need closure. You need distance, perspective, maybe a decent haircut and some new clothes that fit the man you're becoming, not the one who got cheated on. I started going to the gym again. Not out of anger. Not out of revenge. Out of respect for the man who spent years putting everyone else first. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen since the wedding. Turns out, they never liked Sarah. She smiled too much with her mouth and not enough with her eyes, one of them said. Wish they'd mentioned that before the vows, but hey, hindsight's cheap and accurate. I went on a few dates. Nothing serious. Just conversations over coffee where no one was lying or pretending or texting someone else in the bathroom. And one afternoon, while hiking a trail I used to walk alone, I passed a woman going the opposite direction. She nodded politely. About 10 minutes later, I saw her again. She doubled back. "Sorry," she said, smiling. "This is weird, but you seem like someone I'd regret not introducing myself to." We talked for an hour. Her name was Claire. She was sharp, honest, and didn't flinch when I mentioned the divorce. She just nodded and said, "Yeah, people suck sometimes. But not all of them." She wasn't a replacement. She was a reminder that the story wasn't over. 3 months after Sarah left, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email. Not a text. A handwritten letter. From her. She said she was sorry. That she'd been selfish. That she didn't expect me to ever forgive her, but she wanted me to know she'd started therapy. She was trying to understand herself better. Trying to be someone she didn't hate in the mirror. I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully and tucked it into a drawer, not to keep. Just to hold onto the reminder that some things can end without needing to be burned to the ground. That night, I sat on the back porch with a glass of bourbon. The wind was cool, the stars were out, and the world was still spinning. And I smiled. Not because I got revenge. Not because I won. But because I let go. Because healing didn't come from hurting her. It came from choosing me. It came from standing in the ashes, breathing deep, and saying, I didn't burn down. I rebuilt. And brother, let me tell you, I rebuilt better.